Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. I saw it happen right in front of me. A little boy standing up for someone when no one else would. What happened next left an entire school in tears. But this story isn't just about a moment of courage. It's about how one child's compassion unlocked a future no one saw coming. You've probably walked past 1,000 heroes without even knowing it. I almost missed this one too. My name is Michael, and I spend most of my time visiting schools across the country. As the community outreach director for a mid-sized tech company, it's my job to identify promising educational programs we might support. But after 15 years of classroom visits and boardroom presentations, everything starts to blur together. The enthusiastic principals, the rehearsed student demonstrations, the carefully curated tour routes. I've seen it all before. This particular morning, I was visiting Lincoln Elementary in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Not the kind of school that typically makes headlines or attracts major donors. The building itself told a story: peeling paint on the walls, outdated textbooks stacked in corners, and a playground with equipment that had seen better days decades ago. Located in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods, Lincoln Elementary served families who were doing their best just to get by. Principal Martinez had been giving me the standard tour, highlighting their after-school reading program and showing me colorful student artwork that lined the hallways. She was passionate about her school, I could tell, but I'd already decided this wasn't going to be a good fit for our company's initiative. We were looking for innovative programs with measurable outcomes, places where our funding could make a splashy difference that would look good in our annual report. "Would you like to see the cafeteria?" Martinez asked as we turned a corner. I nodded automatically, checking my watch. I had another school to visit across town by noon, and I was already mentally composing the polite rejection email I'd send later. That's when the bell rang, and suddenly the hallways filled with children. I pressed myself against the wall as they streamed past, their energy a stark contrast to my corporate weariness. Principal Martinez suggested we wait for the rush to subside, so we stood there watching as the kids made their way to lunch or recess. I almost missed it. If I'd been checking my emails or thinking about my next appointment, I would have. But something made me look out the side window toward the playground, where children were spilling out into the crisp autumn air. There was a small boy huddled against the brick wall of the building, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Even from a distance, I could tell he was crying, shoulders shaking, head down, trying to disappear into himself. Kids flowed around him like water around a rock, most not even seeming to notice him there. "Is that child all right?" I asked Martinez, pointing. She squinted through the window. "That looks like Danny Ramirez. I should send someone to check on him." But before she could move, we both saw another boy approach. This second child was small for his age, wearing jeans that were a bit too short, and a faded blue sweatshirt that had seen better days. His sneakers were worn at the edges, with a strip of duct tape holding one sole together. Justin Chen, I would later learn. At first I thought this might be trouble, another kid coming to tease the crying boy. It happens all too often. But instead, the small boy in the taped-up sneakers stood directly in front of the crying child, positioned like a shield between him and the playground. From our vantage point, we could see a group of larger boys notice the pair and start heading their way. Their body language said everything: the swagger, the pointing, the laughing among themselves. Classic playground bullies spotting easy targets. "I should get out there," Principal Martinez said with concern, already moving toward the door. But before she could reach it, we witnessed something that stopped us both. The small boy in the worn clothes didn't run. He didn't call for a teacher. He simply stood his ground as the bigger kids approached, placing a hand gently on the crying child's shoulder while facing the oncoming group. When the larger boys reached them, words were exchanged that we couldn't hear, but we could see the little defender shake his head firmly. When one of the bigger kids tried to reach around him toward the crying boy, the small defender gently but deliberately moved to block the way. Not aggressively, not pushing or shoving, just present, unmovable. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably less than a minute, the group of bigger kids shrugged and wandered off, apparently deciding this wasn't worth the trouble. Only then did the defender turn around, help the crying boy to his feet, and walk with him toward the school building, his arm around the other child's shoulders. "Who is that?" I asked, pointing to the defender, the one who stepped in. Principal Martinez smiled. "That's Justin Chen, 2nd grade. Quiet kid, but one of our brightest. Does he do that often? Stand up for others? She nodded. More than we probably even know. He doesn't do it for attention. In fact, he gets embarrassed when teachers point it out. Something about the scene I'd witnessed stuck with me. Throughout the remainder of the tour, I found myself distracted, thinking about that small boy with the taped shoes and the unflinching courage. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, just a quiet moment of one child recognizing another's pain and doing something about it. The kind of moment that happens every day, without witnesses or recognition. Principal Martinez, I said as we concluded the tour. I'd like to learn more about Justin Chen. She looked surprised, but pleased. Of course. Would you like to meet him? I did, but I wanted to do it right, not to pull him out of class or make him feel singled out. Martinez suggested I might come back the following day when his class would be presenting their science projects in the multi-purpose room. I could observe without drawing attention to him. That night in my hotel room, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. In all my years visiting schools, attending fundraisers, and reviewing applications for educational grants, something about this felt different. I'd seen plenty of impressive student achievements, robotics competition winners, perfect test scores, remarkable musical performances. But that simple act of courage and kindness on the playground struck me as something rarer and more valuable. I called my wife before bed, as I always did when traveling. "How was the school?" she asked after we'd caught up on family matters. "Interesting," I replied, then found myself telling her about Justin, about the taped shoes and the worn sweatshirt, about how he'd positioned himself as a human shield without hesitation. "Sounds like you found something worth seeing," she said. I could hear the smile in her voice. My wife had always claimed I was too focused on metrics and outcomes, too dismissive of the human element in our company's philanthropic work. Maybe I did, I admitted. The next morning I arrived at Lincoln Elementary earlier than scheduled. The multi-purpose room was being set up for the science fair, with folding tables arranged in rows and construction paper signs marking each student's spot. I helped a teacher move some chairs, trying to blend in rather than stand out as an important visitor. As students began filing in with their projects, I spotted Justin immediately. He was carrying a small display board that had clearly been pieced together from reused materials. The back showed traces of a grocery advertisement that had been painted over. His project was about plant growth under different light conditions, with 3 small seedlings in repurposed plastic cups. While other kids had parents helping them set up, Justin worked alone, carefully arranging his plants and straightening his hand-drawn charts. His precision and focus were evident even from across the room. When he finished, he stepped back to survey his work, then noticed a girl at the next table struggling with her display. Without hesitation, he moved to help her steady the wobbly board. I watched as the room filled with students, teachers, and parents. Justin's parents didn't appear to be there, but he didn't seem bothered by this. He stood quietly by his project, occasionally practicing what looked like an explanation under his breath. When the presentations began, I moved closer to hear Justin's. As students took turns explaining their experiments, I noticed he paid careful attention to each speaker, nodding encouragingly when some of his classmates got nervous or forgot their words. When it was his turn, he spoke clearly but softly, explaining how plants seek light through a process called phototropism. His explanation was remarkably thorough for a second grader, showing an understanding beyond his years. After the presentations, I approached Principal Martinez, who was supervising the event. "Could we speak privately about Justin Chen?" I asked. In her office, Martinez filled me in on what she knew. Justin lived with his grandmother in a small apartment about a mile from the school. His mother had passed away 2 years earlier after a long illness, and his father worked 2 jobs to keep the family afloat, as a night janitor at a downtown office building and weekends at a local gas station. Despite their financial struggles, Justin never complained and always came to school prepared, even if his supplies were second-hand. "He's reading at a 5th grade level already," Martinez told me. "His math skills are just as advanced, but what really sets Justin apart is his character. I've never seen him ignore someone in need, even when it would be easier to walk away." "Like yesterday on the playground," I said. "Exactly. And that wasn't an isolated incident. Last month we had a new student who speaks very little English. Justin took it upon himself to help the boy find his classes and eat lunch with him until he made friends. Justin doesn't speak the boy's language. He just used gestures and patience. Has he ever had any recognition for this? Awards or acknowledgement? Martinez shook her head. We've tried, but he gets uncomfortable with attention. When we gave him a Student of the Month certificate last year, he asked if he could receive it privately instead of at the school assembly. Something about this touched me deeply. In my corporate world, good deeds were often performed with an eye toward recognition. Press releases were drafted before charitable initiatives were even completed. Here was a child doing the right thing simply because it was right, with no thought of reward or recognition. I'd like to help him, I said finally. My company has a scholarship fund, but we typically work with high schools identifying promising students headed to college. But maybe we could make an exception. Martinez's eyes widened. What kind of help did you have in mind? I wasn't entirely sure yet. For starters, educational support, tutoring, enrichment programs, whatever would benefit him most. Maybe a college fund that would grow until he's ready for it. That would be extraordinary, she said carefully. But I should warn you that his family is very proud. His grandmother in particular might be hesitant to accept charity. It wouldn't be charity, I clarified. We invest in promising students all the time. It's what my company does. Justin would be earning this through his own merit and character. We discussed the possibilities, and Martinez agreed to arrange a meeting with Justin's father and grandmother. In the meantime, I called my company's CEO directly, rather than going through the usual channels. Aaron Chen and I had started at the company around the same time 15 years ago, and though he'd risen much higher in the ranks, we'd maintained a friendly relationship. Michael, he answered on the second ring. How are the school visits going? I found something different, I told him, then explained what I'd witnessed and what I was hoping to do. There was a pause on the line. This isn't our usual approach, he said finally. We typically focus on technology programs, coding clubs, robotics teams. Measurable outcomes. I know, but I'm asking for some flexibility here. This child has something you can't measure with standardized tests. Another pause. You feel that strongly about it? I do. I realized I meant it more than I'd expected to. Enough that I'd be willing to personally sponsor part of the scholarship if the company can't cover it all. That got his attention. I wasn't known for impulsive generosity. Send me a proposal, he said finally. Let's see what we can do. 2 days later, I was sitting in Principal Martinez's office with Justin's father, Mr. Chen, and his grandmother, Mrs. Chen. Justin was still in class, unaware of the meeting. Mr. Chen had come straight from his night shift, his eyes tired but alert. He wore clean but worn clothes, his hands bearing the calluses of constant work. Mrs. Chen was a tiny woman with a straight back and watchful eyes, her English more limited than her son's. I explained who I was and why I was there, describing what I had seen on the playground without embellishment. As I spoke, I saw Mr. Chen glance at his mother with a small, unsurprised smile. This was not news to them. They knew exactly who their son and grandson was. When I outlined the scholarship offer, educational enrichment now, college funds for the future, I was careful to emphasize that this was an investment in Justin's potential, not charity. Still, I saw the hesitation in their faces. Mr. Chen spoke carefully. We are very grateful for your interest in Justin. He is a good boy who works hard, but we have always taught him to make his own way. We don't want him to think he needs special help. His grandmother said something in Mandarin, and Mr. Chen nodded before translating. My mother says that in our culture, education is the greatest gift. She wants to know why you would offer this to a child you don't know. It was a fair question. Why had this particular child, among thousands I'd encountered in my work, affected me so deeply? I thought carefully before answering. In my job, I see many impressive young people, I said slowly. Students who win competitions, who get perfect test scores, who can recite facts or play instruments beautifully. What I saw Justin do was different. He showed a kind of wisdom and courage that can't be taught. When he helped that crying child, he wasn't doing it for recognition or reward. He saw someone hurting, and he acted, even when it meant facing bigger kids who could have easily turned on him instead. I looked directly at Mr. Chen. My company invests in potential. Usually that means funding technology programs or science labs. But the most sophisticated computer in the world is useless without the human wisdom to guide it toward helping others. Justin already has what we can't teach. I'd like to help provide him with tools to match his character. Mrs. Chen asked another question in Mandarin, her expression serious. My mother wants to know what you would expect from Justin in return, Mr. Chen translated. Nothing he isn't already doing, I said. Continue his education. Keep being the person he already is. When he's older, perhaps he might consider an internship with our company, but that would be his choice entirely, with no obligation. There was a lengthy discussion in Mandarin between father and grandmother. I waited patiently, understanding this was a big decision that touched on matters of pride, culture, and family values. Finally, Mr. Chen turned to me. We would need to talk with Justin. This should be his decision too, even though he is young. He understands more than most children his age. Of course, I agreed. And I want to be clear, this isn't about singling Justin out as special or different from his classmates. This is about recognizing that his particular combination of intellect and character could take him far, with the right support. Principal Martinez, who had been quietly observing, suggested that Justin could be brought in now if everyone was comfortable with that. After a moment's consideration, both father and grandmother nodded. A few minutes later, Justin entered the office, looking confused and a little worried to see his family there in the middle of a school day. He was even smaller up close, his watchful eyes taking in the scene with the careful assessment of a child who has learned to read situations quickly. Mr. Chen spoke gently to his son in Mandarin, presumably explaining who I was and why I was there. Justin's eyes widened slightly as he looked at me, then quickly lowered in what seemed like embarrassment. "Hello, Justin," I said when Mr. Chen had finished. "I'm Michael. I saw what you did on the playground the other day helping that boy who was upset." Justin nodded slightly but didn't speak. "That was a very brave thing to do," I continued. "Not many people would stand up like that, especially when facing bigger kids." He looked up then, his expression serious. "Danny was crying," he said simply, as if that explained everything, and in a way, it did. "I work for a company that helps students who show special promise," I explained. "We think you're one of those students. We'd like to help with your education, special programs, college savings, things like that. Would that be something you might be interested in?" Justin looked to his father and grandmother, clearly processing this unexpected turn of events. His grandmother said something to him softly, and he nodded before turning back to me. "Why me?" he asked directly, with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. There are lots of smart kids at school. The question was so straightforward, so genuine, that I had to smile. "There are indeed many smart kids," I agreed. "But intelligence alone isn't what we're looking for. We saw how you help others without being asked, how you notice when someone is struggling and do something about it. That kind of awareness and compassion is special." Justin considered this for a moment, then asked another surprisingly mature question. "Would I have to leave my school? Leave my friends?" "Not at all," I assured him. "You'd stay right here. The help we're offering would be extra things. Special classes after school or on weekends if you want them, books and learning materials, saving for college when you're older, but your day-to-day life wouldn't change unless you wanted it to." He seemed relieved at this, though still thoughtful. After another exchange in Mandarin with his grandmother, he turned to me with unexpected directness. "Could other kids get help too? Like Danny and Maria and Sean?" The question caught me off guard. Here was a child being offered a significant opportunity, and his first thought was to include others. I glanced at Principal Martinez, who was watching with a knowing smile, as if to say, "See what I mean about this kid?" "That's a very good question," I said carefully. "This particular scholarship is just for you, but my company is always looking for ways to help more students. Maybe you could help us think about that as you get older." Justin nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. "Okay," he said simply. "Thank you." And that was it. No jumping for joy, no excited chatter about what he might want or need. Just a quiet, sincere thanks from a child who already understood that with opportunity comes responsibility. As the meeting concluded and Justin returned to class, Mr. Chen shook my hand firmly. "My son has his mother's heart," he said softly. "She would be very proud of this moment." The formal paperwork and arrangements took several weeks to finalize. My company established a special scholarship fund for Justin, structured to provide immediate educational enrichment as well as long-term college savings. I insisted on adding a clause that allowed a portion of the annual funding to support general programs at Lincoln Elementary, a nod to Justin's concern for his fellow students. I didn't tell Justin that I'd also quietly arranged for a corporate donation to refurbish the school playground and update the science lab. Some things were better done without fanfare or attachment to any individual's name. 3 months after my initial visit to Lincoln Elementary, I returned to check on how things were progressing. Justin was now enrolled in a weekend enrichment program at the local university, where he was particularly enjoying the robotics workshop. His father reported that Justin still didn't talk much about the scholarship, but they'd noticed him reading more advanced books and staying up late working on projects. Principal Martinez walked with me around the school, showing me the newly installed playground equipment and the science lab updates that were underway. As we passed by the cafeteria during lunch period, she nudged me and pointed through the window. There was Justin, sitting at a table with several other children including Danny, the boy he'd protected that first day. I watched as Justin unwrapped his lunch and quietly divided his cookie in half, sharing it with a girl across the table who didn't seem to have a dessert in her lunchbox. Some things don't change, Martinez said with a smile, but other things had changed, I noticed. Justin's sneakers were new now, no duct tape in sight. His clothes still weren't flashy, but they fit properly. There was a new backpack beside him on the bench. Small changes, practical improvements rather than status symbols. As we continued our tour, Martinez filled me in on an unexpected development. Justin's father has enrolled in night classes at the community college in, she told me, computer science. Apparently Justin has been teaching him what he learns in his weekend program, and it sparked an interest. This news pleased me enormously, the ripple effects of opportunity, spreading outward. Over the next 5 years, I visited Lincoln Elementary at least twice annually. I watched as Justin grew from that tiny second grader into a confident middle schooler, consistently at the top of his class academically but never losing the fundamental kindness that had first caught my attention. The scholarship had expanded to include summer programs at MIT's Youth Science campus and specialized math training with university professors who were amazed by his aptitude. But the moments that always struck me most weren't the academic achievements. They were the quiet acts of character I'd occasionally witness or hear about from his teachers. Justin tutoring other students during his free periods. Justin starting a buddy system for new immigrants at the school, pairing English-speaking students with newcomers. Justin working with the janitor to establish a school recycling program after learning about environmental conservation. When he graduated from elementary school at the top of his class, Justin gave a brief speech that left few dry eyes in the auditorium. He thanked his teachers, his father and grandmother, and then mentioned all the people who stand up for others when it would be easier not to. He didn't mention me or the scholarship directly, but when our eyes met across the room, I saw a depth of gratitude that needed no words. Justin went on to excel in middle school and then high school, where he continued to combine academic excellence with quiet leadership. The college fund grew steadily, ensuring he would have his choice of universities when the time came. When he was 16, he spent a summer interning at my company's headquarters, impressing everyone with both his technical skills and his interpersonal awareness. During that summer, he and I had lunch together every Friday. It became a highlight of my week, watching this remarkable young man share insights about technology, ethics, and human behavior that many adults hadn't grasped. During our final lunch before he returned to school, I asked him a question I'd been curious about for years. Do you remember that day on the playground? The day I first saw you help Danny? Justin smiled. Of course, though I didn't know anyone was watching at the time. What made you step in like that? Most kids would have walked away or called for a teacher. He thought about it for a moment, stirring his drink thoughtfully. My mom used to tell me a story, he said finally, about a boy who had the ability to see colors when others could only see in black and white. The boy could have kept this ability to himself, used it for his own advantage, but instead he found ways to describe the colors to others, to help them experience what he could see naturally. Justin looked up at me. She said some people are born with the ability to see others' pain more clearly, and that it's not a burden, but a gift, a responsibility. He shrugged slightly. I saw Danny crying. The colors were so bright to me. How could I walk past? I nodded, understanding completely. Justin had an innate empathy that no scholarship or educational program could instill. We had given him tools and opportunities, but his essence, that ability to see the colors of human emotion and respond with compassion, had been there all along. By the time Justin graduated high school as valedictorian, he had his choice of prestigious universities, all offering substantial scholarships to supplement the fund we'd established. He chose Stanford, where he planned to double major in computer science and ethics. The night before he left for California, his family hosted a small gathering. Mr. Chen, who had completed his associate degree and now worked in IT support, had tears in his eyes as he embraced his son. Mrs. Chen, a bit more stooped now but still sharp-eyed and dignified, presented Justin with a family heirloom, a jade pendant that had belonged to his mother. I was honored to be included in this intimate family moment. As the evening wound down, Justin walked me to my car. "I've been thinking about what you asked me," he said, "about why I helped Danny that day." "Yes?" I prompted, curious about what new insight he might have had. "I think there was another reason too," he said thoughtfully. "When my mom was sick before she died, there was a nurse who always noticed when I was upset in the waiting room. She would bring me a juice box, or show me a magic trick, or just sit with me. Small things that made a huge difference. I think maybe I was just passing on what she gave me." The simplicity and truth of this statement struck me deeply. Kindness, creating more kindness. Compassion rippling outward across years and lives. "Your mother would be incredibly proud of you," I said, meaning it with all my heart. Justin nodded, his eyes bright in the darkness. "I know, and I want you to know that what you did, that scholarship, the opportunities, I'm going to find ways to pass that forward too." "I believe you will," I told him. As I drove away that night, I thought about how a single moment of observation had changed so many lives. Justin's, his father's, mine, and countless others through Justin's actions over the years. My company had funded many educational initiatives during my tenure. We'd built computer labs, sponsored robotics teams, and awarded hundreds of scholarships. All valuable contributions, but none had yielded the profound satisfaction of watching Justin Chen grow from that small brave boy on the playground into the remarkable young man now headed to Stanford. The metrics-driven part of me could point to his test scores, his university admission, the measurable outcomes that justified our investment. But the true value lay in something that couldn't be quantified, the character that had compelled him to stand between a crying classmate and potential harm all those years ago. As it turned out, I wasn't just investing in Justin that day. I was investing in my own redemption from corporate cynicism, in the power of human connection over cold metrics. I was investing in the belief that sometimes the most valuable qualities are the ones you can't measure on any standardized test. When Justin graduated from Stanford 4 years later, he had already co-founded a tech startup focused on creating accessible educational tools for underserved communities. At his graduation party, he pulled me aside to share his company's first major success, a contract to provide their software to 50 schools across the country. "We're starting with Lincoln Elementary," he told me with a smile, "where it all began." The circle complete, I watched as he rejoined the celebration, moving easily between family members, professors, and childhood friends, including Danny, now a pre-med student at UCLA. Later that evening, when most guests had departed, I found myself sitting on the porch with Mr. Chen, both of us nursing a final glass of wine. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" I asked him. "That day when we first met at the principal's office?" He smiled, looking out at the gathering darkness. "My mother says that when you plant a seed, you must have faith in what you cannot yet see. The seed was always in Justin. You just helped provide good soil and sunlight." I nodded, appreciating the wisdom in his words. It was my honor to do so. We sat in comfortable silence for a few moments before Mr. Chen spoke again. "You know, Michael, what you saw that day on the playground, Justin helping Danny, it wasn't an isolated incident. There were 100 such moments before you happened to witness one. There will be 100 more that neither of us will see." "I believe that," I said, "but here is what I have learned." He continued thoughtfully. "It only takes one person paying attention at the right moment to change everything. You were that person for my son." His words humbled me. In truth, Justin had changed my life as much as any scholarship had changed his. He had restored my faith in human potential, in the power of noticing what others overlook. 10 years later, Justin Chen became the youngest CEO ever to be featured on the cover of Business Week, celebrated not just for his company's innovative technology, but for their ethical business practices and commitment to educational equity. The article mentioned the scholarship that had helped launch his education, but Justin made sure it also highlighted the real beginning, a moment of kindness on an elementary school playground. By then, my company's scholarship program had been completely redesigned, with Justin's help to identify and support students who demonstrated exceptional character and compassion alongside academic potential. We called it the Playground Initiative, a name that made Justin laugh but which perfectly captured its essence, looking for greatness in unexpected places. Sometimes I visit schools with the new program coordinators, standing quietly in hallways and cafeterias, watching for those small moments that reveal a child's true character. I tell them what I learned from Justin, that the most promising investment isn't always the student with the highest test scores or the most polished presentation. Sometimes it's the child who notices another's tears when everyone else walks by. I think often of that ordinary Tuesday morning at Lincoln Elementary, when I almost missed something extraordinary. How easy it would have been to keep my eyes on my phone, or to dismiss what I'd seen as just kids being kids. How many other Justins have I walked past in my life, their quiet acts of courage and kindness unseen and uncelebrated? It's impossible to know. But what I do know is this. The day I saw Justin Chen stand up for a crying classmate changed the direction of many lives, including my own. It taught me that sometimes the most valuable things can't be measured in spreadsheets or quarterly reports. It showed me that in our rush to fund innovation and excellence, we might be overlooking the most important quality of all, the capacity to see others' pain and do something about it. Justin is 30 now, a respected leader in both technology and philanthropic circles. He still makes time to mentor students at Lincoln Elementary, which now has one of the most advanced STEM programs in the district, thanks in part to his company's support. When I visit him there, I sometimes catch him looking out at the playground with a small, reflective smile. I know what he's remembering. The day a small boy with taped shoes stood his ground against bigger kids to protect someone vulnerable. The day he couldn't have known someone was watching, someone who had the power to help unlock his future. I've spent my career making investments on behalf of my company, analyzing risks and projecting returns. But the best investment I ever made wasn't calculated on any spreadsheet. It was a moment of attention, a decision to look more closely at what others might have missed. The dividends of that investment continue to compound in ways I could never have predicted. Every student Justin mentors, every school his company helps, every life touched by his unique combination of brilliance and compassion, these are returns beyond measure. And it all began with a simple act of courage on a school playground, a moment that reminds me, even now, to pay attention to the quiet heroes walking among us every day. Because sometimes the greatest potential isn't found where everyone is looking. It's found in those small, brave moments when a child chooses kindness over indifference, courage over comfort. Those are the moments worth investing in. Those are the seeds of a better future. If there's one lesson I've learned from Justin Chen, it's this. Never underestimate the power of seeing what others miss. That crying child, that brave defender, they're everywhere, waiting to be noticed. All it takes is one person paying attention at the right moment to change everything. I was lucky enough to be that person once. The question I ask myself every day is, where else might such moments be happening right now, just waiting for someone to notice? So I keep my eyes open. I pay attention to small acts of courage and kindness, and I encourage others to do the same, because you never know when the simple act of truly seeing someone might change their life, and yours, forever. Take a deep breath and consider leaving a like if this story touched you. Subscribe to not miss more stories about hidden heroes and unexpected kindness. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the smallest acts of courage can change lives. Which part of this story moved you the most? Let me know in the comments below.